everybody. Welcome to Tammy Tuesday. We're happy that you're here with us to join in the great conversation. I'm thrilled to introduce my guest. She is a spiritual mentor of mine, Dr. Shirley Ryan of the Conscious Life Institute. Shirley, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you. You have been such a huge part of my spiritual journey, especially in the very beginning. And I love how we met. It was through Linda Heighthouse, who I was able to receive some of her beautiful gifts in the world. And when we spoke, she said, Tammy, you have a lot of gifts yourself. You know that, right? And I said, I think you're right, but I don't know what to do about that. And so she said, well, I have someone for you. And she talked about you and how much you helped her as a mentor to step into her gifts. And so that's how we met. So it's been obviously a long journey since then, since we've worked together, because we did your 36-week program, which was beautiful and amazing and helped me really step into deeper understandings of what's really going on. And I'm grateful.
Well, I enjoyed working with you.
Yeah.
And we had a good time.
Yes, we did. I was on sort of the slow track because it took me a little time I have obviously a very busy life, and I wanted to dedicate everything into what I was learning, because your program is incredible. And I want to dive into the conversation. I'd love to give our listeners just a little bit of a background and how you stepped into what you're doing, because there's so much that you do. And your understanding and wisdom as to, your spirituality and the spiritual work that you do is really incredible. So maybe give just a slight background on where you came from. I know you're obviously a clinical psychologist, and that's where it started. And so I'd love to dive into how things woke up for you to get a deeper understanding to working with your guide, Thanes, who I also know well, because she came into interface with me when we worked together too.
Right.
So I'll let you sort of take it away and let everybody hear your story.
Okay. Well, my awakening occurred gradually over time. And it's no accident that I wrote a book called Tag about a little turtle going in search of itself, because it was kind of like that. I was really a slow bloomer, and by the time I met Tag, I was kind of an old gal to be starting this venture.
How old were you?
I was probably in my 30s or 40s, So, yeah, probably about that. And I had lots of experiences, but you could just go, well, yeah, okay, that happened, but it wasn't until I would say probably after a retreat that I started really awakening. And it wasn't that anything in the retreat, it was just, people meditating together, the energy in the room. We did some art, we did some mandalas, we did some of those kinds of things. I learned a little bit about automatic writing. And during that time, what I remember best is coming home and deciding to do something with this automatic writing. So I sat down and used their process, which is, I think, different than well, definitely different now. I just type, But at the time, I had to work left-handed so I could reach my right brain or something like that. That was the process,
their method. That was their method to do
that
it.
was their method. And then finally one day, a thought came in my head, and I think that it was things telling me, you really don't have to use that archaic method. Just go to your computer and start writing. And I did. And it just happened, And so, yeah, that was the beginning. And that was when I started that automatic writing. I just called it my journal, and I type out, every day I just type a paragraph or so. And that's when I started to get more information. And I met the first of, I met, um, yeah, I met a couple of, I would say, what would you call it when you don't know who a name, what a name is? It was just like entities
An
out there that
entity. Yeah.
talked to me. Yeah. And they eventually became people,
Mm.
one of the people of the universe. My guide, of course, has passed over, and she's in the afterlife, and she is not affiliated with my family at all. She is a mentor that I've had for my whole, um, all of my many lives, and I've had many lives. We all have had quite a few lives, some of us more than others, but I'll tell you, I've had many because I've been around for a long time.
Yeah. So when you started going back to the automatic writing, just so people that are listening understand what that is, explain what was happening and how you were experiencing that, because it's really interesting. I've now experienced it myself and I know what that feels like,
Mhm.
but to maybe explain
Right.
it to people that don't know what that means and what goes into that.
Well, the process that I first learned, I would meditate just for a few minutes, although at the time I was meditating long periods of time, like an hour or two, and sometimes even more. Then this message came and said, you don't have to meditate that long. You just have to get centered. And so that's what I was doing at that point. I just got centered and I took my left hand, and which I'm right-handed, so it's the non-dominant hand. And that's how I first learned. Of course, you can just meditate and write with your dominant hand. And it'll work just as well. What you're doing is focusing your energy, intending to disconnect from your higher consciousness, your consciousness. Sometimes you're at a place where you're just connecting with your higher consciousness. At that time, I didn't really realize that I was actually going beyond that. But I was thinking it was my um, higher consciousness at the time.
That was helping you
And
write the
so,
words that were coming onto the paper.
and it was, and I began, the cue was to begin by saying, Dear Shirley. So you're writing a letter to yourself.
Yeah.
And that was their method, and it worked really well.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very awkward trying to work with your non-dominant hand. But
Right.
yeah, it worked really well. Mm-hmm. And as you step away from your conscious self, it opens the door or allows the universe to move through you. And so that's what was going on. And these personas or entities were coming through and talking to me. And I knew it wasn't me because they were giving me information that I didn't know and that I had no clue about. So I really knew that was not me speaking.
Were you asking them
Something.
questions at that time, saying, what is it that you're telling me? Were you asking questions and getting answers and writing this down?
Yes. Yeah. Well, at first it was a stream of consciousness just, being written out. And then eventually I started going, what does that mean? And asking more questions and diving into the concepts and the ideas that were coming to me. And the more I dived in, the more they allowed in
Mm.
to my awareness because um, because that just brought up something about when I was about 27. I was meditating and I started dreaming, and in my dreams, I would get messages, and I saw a nursery where little infants were in this nursery, like a hospital nursery, and it was kind of darkened room, and I heard this booming voice that said, "Well, you understand, she sees with her collective, um, with the collective eyes of spirit." And I thought, and I had no clue what that meant. I didn't know what a collective was. I had to look it up. I had no spiritual insights at that time. It was just raw me.
And you heard this
So
voice when you were sleeping. And this is way before you even went into these studies and this
way
retreat,
before.
any of this stuff. So what did you think when that happened? Because it came out of nowhere. You never had any experience like that. So what did you think about that? What did you do about that?
Well, I struggled because I really struggled with it. I was very unsure of that whole experience. I had lots of dreams and lots of uncomfortable dreams because I was struggling with the whole religious stuff that I was working with. I was still a practicing Catholic at the time, and which was a big no-no. I mean,
Right.
none of this was, and I remember having another dream where I had a jewelry box, a little one about this big, and there with hidden drawers. And I was opening these hidden drawers and looking at the jewels in these hidden drawers. And about that same time, I started being very attached to the moon for some reason. I meditate on the moon, but that's another story. Anyway, that is just how I started to awaken, but it was 10, 15 years later that I was still I thought, I had no idea. I was still trying to figure all this out.
Right. So it was coming to you. You just weren't knowing what it was and were afraid to receive it or just decipher what was happening. So you kind of just let it be there, but you were confused by it all. Is that accurate to say?
You've kind of frozen. Are you
Yes,
there?
I know. I'm sorry about that. So what I was saying was you were receiving this, but then
Yeah.
it was confusing. You didn't really know what to do with it. You just kind of sat with it and
I
said,
was pretty young.
yeah.
I
Okay.
was in my late 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, fast forward to this workshop, and it all started to make sense. And I really didn't get anything before that. I think I went to a Brian Weiss workshop, and that kind of told me a little bit about the afterlife, just briefly. It was just a full day or weekend workshop. But most of what I got was after 1999 or after I don't remember, about that time. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about as you started to progress. So automatic writing was now becoming part of your life. Were you doing this on a regular basis and that was delving you into other things and understandings? What was happening during that time?
Well, I called it my journal, and every day I would work in my journal, either looking at dreams that I've had and processing that, or experiencing something in my life. I was pretty active at that time. I was into a lot of social groups, and I did a lot of volunteer work, and I was starting my program and writing my books and things like that. But even my books, I would write the book like that. The first one was about a turtle and going in search for itself, antiquities of the waters of antiquities, and I was I would read that. I'd write it, and then I'd read what I wrote, and I really I had an inkling that this was special, but at the time it was in 3 small separate books. And someone said, you've got to put those books together in one book. Those are chapters. And I said, well, that makes sense. So anyway, it was all about the afterlife and the four rooms of man's greatest desires and compassion, neutrality, things like that. And anyway, that's when I started saying, well, something's coming to me that I have to pay attention to. So I got pretty serious about doing little paintings of some of the things I was seeing, and that would go into these books. And yeah,
you always have talked about how you always have gotten a lot of visuals and images and visions and things. So and you draw them and you create them, like you can see them. They become
visions.
They become illustrations, and you create illustrations of this.
Yes, I've always either painted with watercolors or painted with electronic paints, and so I've kept quite a record of everything that I've seen throughout the years, and not everything, I didn't use everything that I saw, but it gave me an understanding of where I was going. So I not only wrote what in my journal, what I was seeing, I also put images so that I would remember. And it wasn't until some period after I started looking back on these books and I realized, oh, gee, that's different than I experienced it when I did it. It's more involved, more complex. It's deeper. It goes to places that I wasn't expecting to experience.
Right. So in your dream time, you also talked about places that you would go. And I know I want to talk about how Thanes came to you, because Thanes is your primary guide who you work with regularly. And
regularly.
Yeah. So talk about how
my only guide.
What's that?
My only guide.
Okay.
She's my only guide. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
So talk about Thanes, because you and her are two peas in a pod.
She has a great sense of humor, and she's always teasing me. And in fact, she takes my pendulum. I work with a pendulum because one day she showed me an image of myself, and she had duct tape over my mouth. And she was trying to tell me, be quiet and let me talk, is what she's trying to do. And now she takes the pendulum, and I got it here, and she puts knots in them. And she'll say, I need for you to focus. And she'll put knots and I'll be trying to get these knots out. And during that time, I've started to focus. So that kind of trips me up and stops me from like obsessive thinking or whatever. But basically, when I first met Thanes, she was coming to me, and I didn't know how she was coming to me or where she was coming to me. And I was already starting to see images in my mind that went places that I knew that I needed to take care of. And I had a very brief moment where I was waking up in the middle of the night, and I would see symbols on my ceiling, but like mandalas and things that I wanted to paint. But they were very like quick, brief. You might call it hypnagogic dream, where you project as you wake up. But mine were pretty specific, like I said, mandalas and imagery. And one time I actually got a formula for something, but I never asked her what it was. But anyway, that was a very period of time where I was very focused on my journals and writing. And one day, I recognized that she was sending me acronyms and 4-letter acronyms. And so she encouraged me to create a little symbol chart where I could use the pendulum to write yes, no, things like that, or create yes, no answers. And then I needed something more specific. So she encouraged me to create this chart without the alphabet on it and numbers. And so she would give me an acronym, and I would look the acronym up on the internet and page down until I got a statement or a sentence, and sometimes whole paragraphs that she wanted to say. Well, this was terribly labor intensive. So I was talking to her and I said, man, that's taking up a lot of my time,
Yeah.
And she said, and I was talking to her as I was looking in the mirror, getting ready for the day and everything. And I was going, oh, geez, I'm really getting old, where I've got wrinkles. I gotta, and she laughed. And on my communication board, it took me to a plastic surgeon down in Southern California. And I said, you think I need a facelift? And she said, no, but if you want it, here it is. And that is when, yeah. And that is when we started bantering, and it became not a job, it was friendship.
I was just gonna say it turned into a friendship.
It turned into a friendship at that point, yes. And so that was kind of my introduction to her as as my mentor, as someone that has been with me through all my many lives, and that I know when we're together in the afterlife, we are friends that joke around and have fun. And like she said, and sometimes we just eat a piece of cake or two, And I said, you eat in the afterlife? And she said, yeah, it's not the same, but it's different. It's different, but it's, there's that gleeful enjoyment of eating something great.
Yeah. So as you developed your relationship and friendship with Thanes, how did she help you? Because she obviously has shared so much wisdom and has helped you in your experiences. So how has that developed? Because I mean, she's from what you've told me about your relationship with her, it's been hugely impactful on what you're doing here in this life. So maybe explain how she's helped you and what she's done to open you up further, to have deeper understandings of everything you're doing here, not even just here. I know that you exist in other places too. What does that look like? You talk about the afterlife. People listening may not understand what you mean when you say that. A lot of people attribute
Talking
that.
about heaven.
What's that?
Most people call it heaven, or nirvana, or this. It's broken down into 7 planes. I don't know how much about the afterlife you want to know about, so stop me. But she has really helped me to understand the universe as a whole, the physical universe, the spiritual aspects of it, how we move from the physical to the afterlife, and all the dimensions or the planes of the afterlife, the levels of the afterlife, and everything that I need to know about that to help other people to grow spiritually. Basically, when I first started working with her, I would just, whenever I had something that I needed to know, I would ask her. But now I talk to her all the time, and I ask her questions about everything that is meaningful to me.
Right. How did you move past working with a pendulum to just direct communication without even having to use a tool? Or do you still use your pendulum? Is that how you primarily communicate?
I still use my pendulum, unless I'm writing. If I'm writing, I don't need the pendulum. But I use the pendulum for questions and answers that just, I'm just, where I'm just wanting to make sure that I'm on track interpreting what she means, because she will send me a image of me in the corner with duct tape when I'm talking to, because I will talk for her sometimes. And if it's just in my head, I will talk. I won't writing anymore. Will I? Okay. She says no. But because sometimes you think you're communicating with your inner self, and if you have another person or another entity inside of you, I don't want to call her an entity. To me, she's a person, but she's passed away. It's just kind of like if you talk to your dad that's passed away, or Aunt Lulu that's passed away,
She's in the spirit realm.
She's in the spirit realm, right. But many times I will go off on because I have a fair amount of knowledge too, because I have a PhD in consciousness. So yeah, I have some background. And she said, yes, you have some background, but that doesn't mean you're interpreting it correctly all the time.
Right.
And so I think it's really important for us to ensure that we are not only accurate when we speak to other people, but when we think to ourselves. And she will send me an image of me in a corner with duct tape on my mouth when I have got off the deep end, or she'll drop on a dime. I had a workshop, and I was using the pendulum to answer people's questions, and she says, I asked her a question that she didn't want me to know, and she dropped on a dime, and everybody said, I guess she told you that you're not getting that information,
Right. Well, speaking about pendulums too, because I work with a pendulum as well. I've told you that. And I've gotten a lot of amazing information and just understanding of things. And it's hugely helpful. People that are listening that don't understand how that works, maybe explain that a little bit. Because when I first started doing that, it was such a hugely helpful tool. And there is a way to use it. It sounds like you're using it on a different level. I mean, there's yes, no, or I don't know, or nothing. So I get there's ways to do that.
The question.
Yeah. So
reframe the question is a good one.
Exactly. But I mean, you said even with what you were using with the pendulum with Thanes, that you would get acronyms, and you even built yourself a little chart. Was the pendulum involved in that, or were you asking direct questions about the chart? How did that work?
The pendulum. I worked with the pendulum. I would swing the pendulum. It's not unknown. You can Google that and it'll talk to you about it. But I swing the pendulum, ask a question, and at first it would give me an acronym, and it would give me 4 letters and or numbers, but usually 4 letters. And I guess the question was how that all works. It works off your energy. You project energy into your pendulum, your energy into the pendulum, and it combines with either your higher consciousness or, in my case, things. And I think on my YouTube channel, I have selected a place where a 3-minute video where Deepak Chopra is teaching Oprah how to use a pendulum. And he keeps saying, just intend to swing it. And that's really how you start. You intend that you want it to swing, yes and no, and maybe, and reframe the question, and that's your energy operating within the scope of this pendulum. When I work with Thanes, it's doing something different. She's moving the pendulum.
Right.
I'm not moving the pendulum.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just holding the pendulum. In fact, the less I move my hand, the more accurate she can be.
Right. Well, that's how I use it with mine. I start it completely still and I ask the
Right.
question and it goes the direction, answering the question
Points.
appropriately, which I understand is yes or no, or maybe, or like you said, rephrase the question. Maybe nothing happens. So I know that it's also,
Right.
I'm not doing it. It's coming from
Right.
higher energy.
Somewhere else.
Exactly. Yeah. It's such an amazingly helpful tool. Like I said, I've discovered so many things about past lives, about all kinds of things, guidance, and it's been just remarkable to me. So I highly encourage people that if they've considered using a pendulum and they feel compelled to get bigger answers to questions that they have, try it, use it, because it works. It's a great tool. I want to talk about ETs, because this is a huge piece of Shirley. And it's fascinating how you work with other worlds and still our united consciousness and how we're all so connected and tied in together. But that's a big piece of how you work with Thanes. I know that you work with other ETs from other places. So talk about that and how that came into your experience here and what you do in those other places and what it looks like. Because I find it so interesting and it's something that people may not have any understanding of.
It's really important for people to get an understanding and to feel comfortable and let go of fear around extraterrestrials, because first of all the hype about big gray eyes and gray bodies and the different perspectives really have to do with your level of fear about it, and those people that see. In fact, I think Dr. John Mack, before he died, said that the level of fear has to do with the projection that you see in your mind of the extraterrestrial. And so the more fear you have, the more distorted they look. And the less fear you have, the more they just look like us, and I took that to heart. That was in Passport to the Cosmos or something like that. Anyway, I took that to heart, and I started in my journal. I wrote about 7 people that were going to come to me, or somebody wrote about 7 people that were going to come to me in the future. And it was one of the people that was telling me that 7 people were going to come to me. And these 7 extraterrestrials are actually working with the Earth, trying to repair the damage that we are doing to it. And not because they're so interested in the people of the Earth, but they're interested in not damaging themselves, because what we do to ourselves affects them. And so these 7 people have come together as a volunteer group to work with channeling positive energy, channeling through meditation to heal the ozone layer of the Earth. And that's why it's so important to do our part to make sure that we take care of the planet, because that ozone layer isn't going to last if we don't work with it. Try to do our part for the environment. So I really didn't know anything about that until they started talking to me about it. And that's how I got interested. And I try to do my part to take care of the planet, the Earth, and all the things that already know about.
Right.
So they came to me as as the first 7 people, and I'm looking at a picture of them, and Thanes is not there in that group. She is, because they're physically alive in other places in the universe,
Yeah.
on different planets. And they're meditating, and they're not even together on the same planet. They're all meditating together in unison, in unison. And the people of their planets are all, they've encouraged the people of their planets to meditate with them, and they are channeling energy to us to promote healing and promote awareness. And I recognized in Googling that these aren't the only 7 people. There are other places, other people that have their 7. I don't know if it's the same 7, but they have their 7, and they've painted or done somehow created pictures of their 7. I've never really kind of put them together to see if they looked alike. It wasn't until recently that Thane said, people would be more interested in us if we just found pictures that would look more like people than your paintings. Sorry, my dear. She started with, sorry, my dear, you're good in art, but it would just be better and cleaner if we had images. And she did a really good job of helping me find images that look just like them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I just go, yeah, oh wow.
Well, I've seen them change from your illustrations that you've created to they look like photographs.
Right, right. And they're just, I've photoshopped them together, and it's been a long process, but they've gotten new uniforms that are actually the Declaration of Lights. That's what they call them. So that whole process is called the Declaration of Lights.
Mm-hmm.
And it's energy from the sun that's damaging the ozone layer and damaging us. And it's because of our footprint, our human footprint.
Right.
I'm not going into all that, but so anyway, they got their own uniform that denotes the Declaration of Lights people, and many of the 19 people of the universe that I'm working with and know and have communicated with have joined this group, and basically it's just a meditation group.
Wow.
And they're in a process of working to heal the damaged parts of the earth.
But also, it sounds like to raise consciousness of the people of the earth so we can all be part of it.
Well, yeah. That's also part of it too.
Right.
So,
well, and you said when you've described some of these, because another gift that you have that I want to talk about is you're seeing things in photography. I don't think people realize in our technology today with the photos that we take, we're such a photo obsessed society, which is really amazing actually, because we capture things in photos that we have no idea that we're capturing. And there's been many instances in photos that I've seen. My sister has done it several times. I've shared lots of those things with you, and you're very good at seeing things in images that people just think it's a light flare or something. And there's stuff there. There's real that you can see visibly. Yeah. So one of them, and I want to talk about faces and actual spirit that you see, but also probes and things that like you're talking about, the Declaration of Light, sending probes into Earth just to get a feel for the atmosphere, and they're tracking things and just following and seeing how things are going. So talk about that a little bit, because I find it fascinating.
That's these probes are usually teal green. They're different than orbs. I've seen a couple that are golden, but most of them are teal green. And so when they come up, and sometimes they come up so clear that you can see the roundness of the probe. And it's a data collector. The data is sent back to the ships. They're coming more frequently. You can, everybody's got a ship that they've collected, UFO that they've collected somewhere, on their websites. And these probes are, they're really kind of basic. It's just the vehicle. They are an actual vehicle, although they seem transparent. They're actually a vehicle that absorbs energy and sends the data back to a mothership somewhere. And that sounds kind of bizarre when I say it out loud, but it's the truth.
Well, and you'll see them in photos. I've seen them in countless photos. They're everywhere.
Yes, it's from everywhere, and even at night, people will take pictures of something at night, and it's dark, and it will show up there. In fact, I have somebody in England that keeps sending me probes that he's found on dark trails. Maybe it's light outside, but he's in a forest under a dark trail. I've got lots of photos of pictures within an orb that looks like a photograph of someone.
Mm-hmm.
It's that clear.
Yeah.
So they are constantly collecting data and trying to, and sending it back to the people, the Declaration of Lights people, and the people that are in these massive meditation groups, and they are working to tweak that their energy in order to continue to heal the earth.
Well, so when the probes go back to them, what information are they getting that's helpful to them? How are they using that information that they're probing with?
I never asked that question. Let's ask things. Yes, let's ask things. Well, tell me something. She's laughing. Okay. Tell us something, Danes. Okay, so give me a minute. Okay. I just need to hone in. She keeps putting it back on the people of Earth to become more aware and to, for example, okay, she sent me an image of Dr. John Mack's work that he did with a group of children in the I can't remember the year it was, but he died. Well, anyway, she I don't know where she's going with that. She was the children, a group of school children, and it's a very popular video you can get on YouTube.
Oh yes, I remember this. I remember this.
Remember?
Yes.
Yeah. He they began sending that information, the scientific information, to their planets, to work on a solution to create a higher energy output from meditation using blocking the sun in certain regions. But for the children and the other children in several different communities, they are making them more aware of the environment. And this group was the first one I ever remembered seeing that was actually met with.
They saw them, right? They saw them come out and they saw them. That's what you're referring to,
yeah,
right?
They saw the
in their schoolyard.
Yes. And
This
they
is a
actually
fascinating story. Yeah.
yeah, in South Africa. Yeah. And the children actually saw him. They actually communicated with him, and they started talking to Dr. John Mack and saying the Earth is in jeopardy and that they had to work with them. Now, the science behind it, the images they're sending to human beings all over the planet to make them more responsive and aware of the things that they need to do to heal the earth. Young people are closer, more capable of opening their minds and experiencing this.
When you say young, how young are we talking?
Children and teenagers.
Okay.
And young adults.
Okay.
And but the science behind it, are you going to give me the science behind it? Yes, but not here. It's too complicated for me to verbalize.
Explain. Okay.
But I will ask her, to actually write it down. I don't know if some people say, well, you have some science background. I have zero science background. I didn't take science, and biology was my last science class in high school.
Yeah.
Biology. I have no background in science. So all of this is pretty, it's like I stumble over the words, I just don't have that background.
Right. Right. That makes sense.
Astronomy, I don't have that background. And yet I'm talking about the planets of the universe and different regions of the universe. I know where these planets are, what their formal name is, and what their Earth name is, and what their Earth number is. Sometimes it's just a number for us, but it's a name for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, that's why I have to actually write it out, because I won't get it.
Right.
Well, I'll share it with you.
I remember too, there was several things that I shared with you when we were going through our 36-week program, speaking every week. And two things happened. One of them, I was having a dream of a place that I had been many, many times. And it was, it's funny, best way I could describe it was it felt like Disneyland. It felt like I was in another world that was just very cheerful and joyful. And it felt like I was at Disneyland, but yet it wasn't Disneyland. It was just a place where there were people. And I remember describing this to you, and in fact, I was there not very long ago, because I do a lot of, I think, astral travel when I sleep. And so I remember talking about this with you, and you explained, you knew exactly, like you said, you knew exactly what it was. And you described what the planet was, and there's a reason that I was going there, and that I've been there before, that I'm trying to get back there, all these things. Then the second thing that happened was when I was in Sedona, I captured a photograph. I had all kinds of really interesting experiences when I was there on that particular trip. And I captured a photograph. And as soon as I took this particular photograph, I heard, look at the photograph, because I was just shooting away. And I looked at it because I thought, okay, I'm going to look at this. And I looked at it and I zoomed in, and it looked like, because I was photographing just a mountainside with nothing on it. And in the mountainside, when I zoomed in, there was an orb, first of all, or like a portal of some kind. It was blue. And when I zoomed in on that very section, it showed me another planet. It showed me another world. And I remember showing you, I was like, what is this place? Like, I could see buildings and stuff that I was not from here. And I remember showing you, and this was the trippiest part. You explained it to me at the time what it was. And then I remember later I was looking at something you had posted on Facebook. It was a illustration that you created with Thanes in it. And the background of where she was the same place. And I said, oh my gosh, do you remember, maybe you don't remember this. I reached out to you and I said, do you remember when I showed you that photograph that I took in Sedona? And I said, look at this. And I compared what I had captured next to what you had illustrated with Thanes in the drawing. And it was the same place. And I was like, do you see that? And it was the same exact place.
And it didn't come from you. This picture that I got was from somewhere else. No,
this picture was old. You drew this picture way before. Yeah. I never even knew you, I think.
Oh, yeah. You're right.
So anyway,
Yeah.
it's just amazing how things are connected. And going back to photos, so many things are captured in people's photos that they just disregard. And if people would stop, especially if you're pulled to look at something, there's a reason
Mhm.
you're being called to look at something. So really examine it, and maybe don't be so quick to dismiss something strange in your photo, because there might be something there. When you zoom in on a hyper zoom, you might see something that you don't expect. That's exactly what happened.
Definitely.
Yeah. And you see that a lot. I've sent you lots of photos saying, what do you see here? And you've said, oh, I see a face. I see this. I see that, all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, there's lots in there. If there's I see a lot of orbs that are empty,
Mhm.
especially the bigger ones. You know, people have lots of big ones on Facebook, but most orbs have something in it. And an old client of mine from many years ago just sent me a bunch of pictures. She's a flight attendant, and she said, "Oh, please post this. I don't have time, but please post it." And so it's up there on my website. But her dad, before her dad died, I worked with him too. And before he died, he said, "I'll come back to you in roses, with roses
Hmm.
and in roses." And so she was in London and took a picture of a shop that had a canopy of roses all across her the window, around the window. And she took a picture of it, which had nothing in it, and then asked somebody to take a picture of her in front of it, three of them. And every one of those three pictures had a big orb at her feet with rainbows coming down. And her father, we've had many experiences where her father communicates with rainbows. That's why she sent it to me. But in the orbs were pictures of him in all of his many lives. And each orb had a different set of images, one with him in his he was a dental he created dentures.
Okay.
And he was an artisan. I mean, he was an artisan. And he had a lab where and he was in his coat in the lab creating dentures, or
Wow.
the individual denture. I could see that in that picture.
Right.
So of course, I've got a 27-inch screen, so I can get big shots,
Right. Detail. Yeah.
but the details. And yeah, I mean, you could see all the details of that, but I've seen many, many orbs where you could see into other planets. You can see it's a spiritual photography. I don't necessarily do it myself, but I can read it
Right.
pretty well.
Yeah.
I can see the images. I know where to look. And so that was just over the last couple of days that happened. And she had quite a experience with her father through that.
Wow. Well, I remember I took
And
one of the photos I took with my sister. I had showed you at one point. There was in a large orb. I mean, just a woman, plain as day. You could see her. It was like, oh my gosh, that's someone. You could see, we didn't know who it was, but it was very, very clear. I mean, I still have the photograph to this day, but and again, my sister, I think, also is able to pick up on a lot of things like that. She's very sensitive to energy. And so I think okay, let me ask you that. People that are taking the photos, do you see, or does it make any difference that certain things get picked up if it's taken by somebody who is more receptive to energy like that? Or does it not matter? Oh, did I freeze? Can you hear me?
yeah, you did. Sometimes it's actually you're drawn. Whoever's taking the photograph, they're drawn to a certain spot, and that was certainly in your case and in her case. But and I've only taken a few pictures where I got a definite shot of something that really mattered. I got a picture of my son who passed away in the afterlife, along with 4 dogs that he was running with during the time he passed away.
Wow.
And he's still with us. I mean, he's not in the afterlife anymore. He's reincarnated. But that image, that's up on my Explorer page too. And it has hearts around it, not orbs, hearts, regular hearts, and then octagon shaped orbs where you can see in and see dogs and see this picture of Jimmy raised above the hearts. And it was Jimmy sending me a message. This was like when I first started.
Wow.
Sending me a message. That is another one of those synchronicities or, happenings that I go, oh, that happened.
Yeah, yeah.
And since then, after some hypnotherapy sessions to bring him to where I could talk to him, he comes to me all the time. So I haven't lost him at all. I've gained a whole other family that he has,
Yeah, yeah. So do you think, here's a question. We're all spiritual beings.
Right.
And we all have all of these gifts. Why is it that some people are super sensitive and pick these things up more easily than others, even when they're young, even when they're not trying or they're aware? Why do you think some of these gifts come more naturally to people than to others?
Well, that's a good question. First of all, everybody's hardwired for some kind of psychic gift. And some people are connected more to these psychic gifts than others, because some people are more, their mind is more creative. Some people are more open. Their minds are more open. I would classify you as a very open-minded spiritual being that is able to not only experience these things, sense when there's something there that needs to be said, or something needs to happen. And I don't think it's any accident that you're an interviewer with a heart, So, but there are some people that just haven't, they're here for a purpose. Everybody comes to the earth, to the physical plane, for a purpose. Their purpose is to grow some part of their soul. And I know there's a lot of people think that they come here to do things for humanity and all that, but you're really just here to grow your soul. And the physical world is the best place to do that, because you have emotions, you have all these feelings of, you have good days and bad days. You have the experiences of feeling angry and sad, and in the afterlife, you're just joyful all the time, and you can't grow because you're too happy. You're just having a good time, and you need to be in places in the physical world where you can learn from things. And Earth is a great place to learn. It's part of the reincarnation cycle. And I'm not talking about religion here. I'm talking about the physical, spiritual cycle that we go through to learn things and to grow our soul, which has nothing to do with religion. So this reincarnation cycle allows us to begin that process. And like I said, I've been around the block for like 10,200 years, things tells me.
Wow.
So I've been around for a long time in various lives on the earth and other places. And this is the best place to refine your soul in who you are,
Evolving.
That evolution that you're working on. I am in 2 other places. You usually have to wait until you've been around the block a few times before that happens. Typically, when you're in the reincarnation process, you don't go to many places. But I am in two different planets, and I have had an opportunity to meet that last person that I met, or that last extraterrestrial that came to me because I was on a planet with her and I lived there. And she's part of that 19 people.
And this is happening at the same time as right now with you here.
It is, yes. The other person is she's a physician on another planet. Thanks was a physician too when she was in the when she was alive, you know. She was a physician. The rest of them are all split between sun scientists, environmentalists, and the 2 physicians. There's a few that are have more mechanical skills, like shipbuilders, things like that.
So I would say common isn't the word I'm looking for, but I would imagine that it's probably not so common, for lack of a better term, for that to be the case, for people to be in multiple places in the same space and time.
It's pretty uncommon.
Yeah.
You have to get through all those, you have to be close to refining your soul, close to that process, the end of that process.
Someone that's like you that you're describing, did Thanes get to that point? And now Thanes is just in the etheric and she's not incarnating into a body now. Is that the next step that people or that souls typically take after they hit that point? Or is it still just a choice and they decide what they want to do at the time?
Well, Thanes got to the afterlife differently than most people.
Oh.
Which is this interesting process. She just, at one point, 10,000 years ago, because that was my first life, about 200 years ago, she was on the earth and had come here before the evolution of people. At that time, it was after the big damage to the earth, where all of the dinosaurs left or were killed, and before she at that point there was actually a mental physical gate that you could go to the afterlife and just see friends, talk to your elders, your guides, things like that.
And this was a choice you could make while you're incarnated. You could say, I'm going to go back home for a minute and then I'll be back.
Yeah. You could just go. And there was I can't remember. It's in it's in Channeling Things, and how it works. But she went there just to pick up some spiritual codes, because she felt that there was a lot of diversity on the earth with the human beings, and this is the Neanderthal days I'm talking.
Right.
It's a long time ago. And she went there for spiritual codes, and she had brought her whole civilization had come to Earth to settle. And then a big catastrophe happened to the Earth, which science has documented. And during that time, quite a few islands went into into the ocean, and completely were obliterated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And several of those planets, civilizations, you can find under the ocean now.
Mm-hmm.
Some, they don't know really what it is. They call them by different names, Atlantis and Mu and different parts of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
They're just lots of different ones. So it's mostly around Japan and around the South Pacific Islands and things like that. And she went to get these codes, spiritual codes from the elders, and she was supposed to bring them back for her people to distribute. And it was a genetic code that could be attached to your, I don't know the science behind it, but she wrote it out in channeling things. Bottom line is, everybody perished during that great earthquake and tsunami, and she was left in the afterlife. And she says, well, I guess it's my time. I would have been there anyway, but anyway, she just gave up her body.
Well, so let me ask you this. So the way I've understood a lot of things that I've studied and learned and feel and that I've heard are that one of those ancient civilizations, they were all, like you said, they had an open gateway to the spirit realm, yeah. Right? So they were truly already ascended in some sense of the word. And that was part of their demise, is the way I understand it, only because really to be here embodied is to experience embodiment as a soul. So you have to do both, right?
Right.
Like masculine and feminine energy, like you have to dance with both to really expand or grow your soul and through these experiences, right? So some of those
it's an integration process.
Exactly. So those ancient civilizations, they were so ascended that they weren't necessarily as focused on their embodiment. And so really, not that it was a bad thing, but they didn't really get the full experience of living on planet Earth, or because they didn't get to do both. Am I saying that right?
Yeah. They didn't get to do both. And so I've never asked her, if all of her friends went with her, or they passed over, obviously, because of the catastrophic earthquakes and tsunamis. And I was actually in the physical world on an island, and I went down with my island, as did all of her people. And so like I said, I've never asked her what became of them. Did they go to the afterlife? Did they reincarnate?
Maybe did they go somewhere else? Did they go to another planet or another world somewhere?
Refinement. They went they went through the process, but they didn't need to go to the afterlife. No, the Earth. No, they were already ascended so far that they didn't have to go back to Earth. They went to other planets,
right,
and peopled them. She talks a little bit about Bacani, and that's one of the planets that a lot of people went to. Her people went to, but they're scattered all over the universe for refinement of their soul. Because once you get to a certain level, you've already done the reincarnation process. You've taken care of big stuff, like anger management and crying all the time over a lost love, and all of the things that people do here, or a lost pet, for example, or just loss.
Mm-hmm.
And she says that at some point it's all about refining who you are as a soul. And that is very complex. It's not big gross stuff like I'm angry today and I just slapped my kid or something like that. It's much more finite, a fine detail of the soul, where the soul is uh, um, asking themselves how well their social interactions spoke their spiritual heart on between others on their planet. The very lowest level, we're we're the lowest level. We're according to Carl Sagan and Michio Seiko, we are a 0.73 on the Kardashev scale of civilizations. There are 3 level 1s. So we haven't gotten to level 1, and we won't for another 100 years or so, according to our science.
Right.
There's only 3 level 1s. The rest of them are level 2s and 3s.
Okay.
So we're talking some really sophisticated planets. We have an IQ of 100 to 145, 160 at the top range. That's really top. They have an IQ of 1200.
Wow.
So their technology,
yeah,
we can't even understand. And Thanes also has an IQ of that range. And I mean, we just can't even get there. And I said, well, wouldn't their brain burn up, And she said, no, their science, they don't have live births, except for that 3 planets. They have live births on that. But on the rest of the universe, they're in vitro fertilization through science, and they're grown. They are in this in vitro fluid for 35 years. They're educated there. They're
like what you see in the movies.
Yeah. Well, don't think that. I mean, they channel. It's like things is channeling to me, and your guide's channeling to you. Everybody, all the Star Trek stuff, not the distortions and the fighting and stuff like that, but the science has been channeled to them. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of people that are pulling out the science for whatever books they're writing, whatever movies they're showing, they're writing. All of that is the science of it is there for us to gather.
Well, it's kind of like you and I have talked a lot about movies. Movies do such a fantastic job of illustrating a lot of things. Like when you were talking about their mind, they have a 1200 IQ, right? It makes me think of Lucy, the movie Lucy.
Oh, yeah. I saw that.
Scarlett Johansson, where she reaches maximum capacity in her brain and she's everywhere, right? She's infinite, which we already are, but she's gone past the embodiment of this, right?
Right.
So it's the same kind of thing. It just changes. And like you talk about, I think it was on another podcast, right, about Star Wars. I mean, you think about the Force, all the messages that are in these movies that we've seen for years. They say messages that are truth, that are truly, they're just truth, and they're being illustrated, and it's confusing to us, but entertaining. But there's a lot of depth to that.
Because we're interpreting these movies based on our physical form here. And when you think of somebody having an IQ of 1200, I said, it'd burn up your brain. And she said, no, the science on other planets is different, and they're groomed, and their sophistication at creating these bodies are infinitely more complex than we could possibly even understand.
Right.
And in fact, they don't even, on those higher planets, they don't go to school. All their education comes through that program, that software program that's embedded into the physical form that's them. They're human. If you cut them, they bleed. They don't have very many illness. They've conquered illness as we know it, but they do have accidents, and they do have, toxic events based on traveling the universe. They go to planets, and you don't know what you're going to find on these planets.
But at that level, aren't they probably very well able or capable of healing themselves?
They are, but they do have physicians still, because there's a point where if you're unconscious, you can't heal yourself. You can to some degree, but there's still a benefit from having someone outside of you. It's kind of like
just like here
having a Reiki person move across your body. It's by far more complex than I could even describe.
Yeah, this is in human today terms.
Yes, in today terms, that's what you would experience. But they do also have equipment that they can use to when someone, like I had an event where I got an story of a man that was on a mining planet and stripped the ligaments in his shoulders, and he had to go in for healing. He was keeping the pain down himself. He was keeping the healing was in process, but he wanted to just be done with it and go back to work. And so he went to the mining, whatever, it's a healing center. And she just went like this with the machine, and he was healed, and he went back, stopped over at the bar waiting for his friends to get off work, and he was healed, but they said, take it easy today. So he went back and just stepped in to wait for his friends to get back off of their job,
Right.
Well,
it's like you said, it's technology and advancement that we couldn't possibly even fathom in this experience we're having here. But it is happening. And so, and it's just evolution and understanding those things. So it's just amazing what is out there that we have no understanding of.
I know. And this is really good because it asks questions that, I've been working with her for so long that I forget to ask, I just can't think of a new question,
Mm-hmm.
and if I see something on TV, and I'll say, well, is that real? Can that happen?
Yeah.
And she'll tell me about it. But, and she says that's a good reason to watch TV, because you get questions in your mind from places that you would not normally ask questions. I mean, I have a friend who uses her pendulum to ask what she's going to fix for dinner, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
I mean, it really isn't, but there's more.
Mm-hmm.
There's more that you can find.
Well, that's the biggest thing. I say that all the time is we need to get better at asking, because there is endless information. It is infinite what we can learn.
And if you don't know what to ask, because you don't have, I mean, when you look at something as sophisticated as the toxicity of a planet that you have no idea what it's like, then you may not know the question to ask.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But if you're exposed to a lot of people, if you're exposed to things in the environment that, for example, on TV or something like that, you know, that will give you information that will help you to ask new questions and provide insight into a depth of insight that you may not always have.
Right. Well, that's why I love doing what I do, because during these conversations, it invokes questions in me that I say, wow, that made me think of this question. And it makes me ask the question. And we're just speaking as people here, as humans, but I mean, like, there's endless information out there that you can get access to if you really hone in and are willing to listen and receive it. You know?
Right. And have people take it seriously enough to ask a question.
Exactly.
You know,
yeah.
I think that's important too.
So Shirley, do you take on new clients in your spiritual work? Are you still taking on, because I know that there was a point when you get oversaturated, you kind of hold off. How, is there a way for people to engage with you to gain more of your knowledge?
Yes, I have a website, and it's just Shirley Ryan PhD, and there you can contact me. You can .com, phd.com, and there you can contact me. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. My phone numbers. I used to be more accessible, but I only take about 2 days work. I work with people a couple of days a week. I try to keep it within about 5 people, 6 people, something like that, because I write constantly. I've got these 2 last books that I'm trying to finish, and one's on the afterlife, which is pretty close to done. It just needs to be refined, and the next one is on Amrita, this 7 group member, and the planets they're with, and all the information I'm gathering about them. And so I really want to put closure to those last 2 books. They're number 10 and number 11.
Wow.
And I'm just
talk about automatic writing. You know how to do that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So yeah, I don't take as many clients as I used to. I used to work all week, you know, but I really feel like my mission here is to finish, to write my experiences, and that 3-book training program that I put together, that is basically everything I learned about how to grow my psychic self, and about the universe, about the afterlife, and what have you. And so that is basically everything that's happened to me documented, in some way, with exercises, so that they can get something out of it too.
Right.
So you can just get the books and read it, but we know what happens when we read a book. Doing the exercises are not always, number one on our plate, So we read it and let it go, and I'm just as bad as anyone. If Thanes wasn't holding holding me accountable all the time, I would probably be lounging and doing. I did a lot of socialization when I was younger. I was part of groups. I did volunteer work all over the world with some groups, and so now I'm sequestered writing, and so yeah, I can help some. I can take on a couple of new clients to help them grow their psychic and spiritual development. But basically, I'm writing nearly every day.
Right. Well, I can attest to you being one of, if not the first real step for me in my spiritual development and growth. I learned so much from what you shared and got to do exercises. So I was able to learn and experience those things myself. So I'm grateful for your program. If anybody
Thank
feels
you.
compelled to reach out to Shirley, please do so. If Shirley can't do it, she can maybe recommend you to somebody who can.
Yeah, I've got
There's lots of people out there that do this, and Shirley just happened to be a gift for me at the right time, at the right place. So I do encourage people to seek that out, because there's so much development you can do to not just for your own growth, but also and end up doing it for others. And it makes you step into a bigger purpose that doesn't just serve you, but it starts with you. Just like my message is pour into you first, and it will overflow on everything it's meant to.
Yeah, and everybody has a different gift, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
important thing. And maybe what might be mediumship for one person might be psychic photography for another,
Right.
or animal communication is
Yeah.
another
It's
big
endless.
one.
There's so much. There's so much. Yeah.
So,
So Shirley, thank you so much for being here with me today. I love your beauty and what you
right.
share with the world, your beautiful light and soul. And I'm so grateful that I know you. So thank you so much.
I'm thrilled that I know you too, and I hope we stay in touch.
Of course, always. So thank all of you for being here with us today. I hope you got a lot out of our conversation. I always do when I speak with Shirley. She's a wealth of knowledge and wisdom. You can always see more of things that I do on my website, TammyTuesday.com. Of course, be sure to subscribe, follow, like, comment. Any questions you have, we encourage. And always sending you with lots of love and light. And remember, life, love, and purpose, it all begins with you. Peace out.